Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.
Welcome to it, Depeche Mode, the podcast. I'm your host, Jon Justice, and thank you so much for checking out another episode. As always, if you want to reach out to me, and we have listener feedback to get to, but later on in the show, TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. And if you're enjoying this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and you can leave a comment there as well. I love reading those back on the show. This week, a little bit of news. Dave performs some more solo work with a Humanist, and I'll get to your emails this week. I've spent some time with Andrea Fryer's AI Depeche Mode songs that she's created, almost an album's worth, and I'm toying with the idea of going and downloading those and actually putting them into a playlist to create an album. I went through a bit of an experiment this morning on the drive into work. I set up my phone on its little car rack, and I put the YouTube channel, the playlist there of her songs sort of on repeat, and listened to a few of them back to back. I was curious what kind of vibe it would get me. And for those that are worried about whether or not I was being distracted on the road, you can actually set up, I don't know if you know this or not, it's a little bit of, here's a little tech hack for you if you're on an iPhone. If you're watching something on your YouTube app on the phone, and say you wanted to go for a jog or a ride, and you wanted to continue listening to it, but having it open right in your pocket or wherever, it doesn't usually work because anything that touches the screen has the potential to go and turn it off or mess it up. If you slide YouTube up with your thumb, you can isolate the screen on your phone. I think most people know how to do that, to where you can actually move the YouTube picture around on your screen while you go to other items on your iPhone. But the other thing that you can do is you can actually go and lock the phone like you typically would, and the audio will turn off. But if you access your audio app from the lock screen and you hit play, it'll begin playing the YouTube video again from the lock screen off of YouTube. So that works really convenient, especially if you're listening to podcast shows or video shows where they're just, individuals talking, but you're on the road and you want to listen to it like a podcast. That's a way that you can go and do that. So I did this morning on the drive in, listening to a few of these songs, and I really enjoyed them, but it was apparent really quick in listening to the songs back to back and being in that setting. Typically, I'd listen to those AI songs seated at a computer or on my laptop, watching the visuals that Andrea had put along with it, the AI images that are really cool, where she created sort of these quasi-music videos with them, and it has the lyrics that show up on screen. Listening to them in more of a traditional format of driving in an automobile, one of my favorite places to go and listen to music, they took on an entirely different meaning to me. And suddenly, the relationship to Depeche Mode became very distant. Whereas the other way that I had been watching those videos and listening to those AI Depeche Mode songs prior, I was focused in, for whatever reason, on Dave's voice and enjoying those songs as something more leaning into Depeche Mode, even though I'm not listening to anything legitimately Depeche Mode apart from the AI program reaching out and grabbing all the information surrounding the band and forming these songs. I think I may still go and make that playlist, but it's pretty clear now, going back to my AI podcast about a month ago, that not that I ever expected that it would be, but it is no replacement for Depeche Mode whatsoever. As a matter of fact, after listening to about 3 songs on the drive-in, I had a little bit of time left before I arrived at the radio station, and I immediately switched over to Memento Mori, and the disc has been in my car. Yes, I still have a disc player in my car. The disc has been in my car now since its release, and I got my hands on it. It's been in the deck now for over a year. It hasn't been removed, I don't think, once. And boy, it highlighted the quality of work that Depeche Mode does, that no AI could ever go and duplicate, even close. And again, that's not me saying that I believe that it could, but hearing them back to back, it really spoke to the magic that is this band. And this brings me to the topic that I want to get to, and I'll do it after I share my thoughts of this latest track that Dave appears on from Humanist, and that is specifically the magic of Depeche Mode, because it got my brain going on a certain track, and I hope you enjoy where we're going to go together. Take a ride with your best friend. I hope that you get behind the wheel with me, because I haven't talked about this part of Depeche Mode, I don't think, before, at least not in this way. So that's a little bit of your tease, but let's talk a bit about Dave Gahan and the song Brother from Humanist. ClashMusic.com writes, Humanist has shared a new single, Brother, a Dave Gahan sung tribute to Mark Lanegan. Now, the song appears on the songwriter's upcoming album, On the Edge of a Lost and Lonely World, which is set to be released via Bella Union on July 26th. As ever, Humanist let his feelings rise to the surface, particularly on this track. The seeds of Brother were sown mere days after Mark Lanegan's sad, untimely death, with initial ideas sketched out alongside Ed Harcourt. The two knew Mark well, and Brother was seemingly a phrase of endearment used by the American songwriter. To get the right vocalist, Humanist opted for Depeche Mode legend Dave Gahan, himself an old companion of Mark Lanegan. The track became a heartfelt salute to the passing of a legend, with cello supplied by the Scottish artist Isobel Campbell, whose collaborative albums with Mark Lanegan earned widespread acclaim. Backed by a beautiful black and white video, it's a somber, moving, and enriching tribute to a dearly loved modern giant. Humanist writes, 1 week after Lanegan's departure, Ed Harcourt reached out to me regarding one of the musical ideas I'd shared. We reminisced about Mark's habit of affectionately calling his closest allies brother, which is what he always called me too. This endearing term hinted at a camaraderie akin to a tight-knit family. The song became Brother, Listening back for the first time, immersed in the music, emotions surged and memories flooded my mind. Initially overwhelmed, I was moved to tears by the sheer power of it all. Dave Gahan, being another of Mark's longtime friends, seemed the perfect fit for the vocals. And after hearing the track, he completely agreed. The track came further to life as more of Mark's former comrades came into the picture. Isobel Campbell's haunting cello, Sieste von Gorkom's stirring strings, all intertwined in a cathartic symphony of remembrance and reverence. It's a humble tribute to a colossal soul, but it feels undeniably fitting. So again, that comes from Clash Music. So my thoughts on the song. I love hearing the backstory on it, and it makes me appreciate the song even more. I listened to the song prior to going and sharing with you this article, and now, in retrospect, I understand why I was hearing what I was hearing. It seemed like a very carefully crafted track, one that was done with a lot of love. I actually felt that when I was listening to it. This song has a vibe about it where this is not just somebody that created a song. They were creating something else, and they were creating a Mark Lanegan tribute in all of this. Dave Gahan's vocals are absolutely fantastic on this track. All that being said, it's not a track that I'm going to go back and listen to or put on a playlist. I enjoyed it for what it was in hearing it, and certainly with Dave Gahan's vocals being on it. But much like Dave's work with Soul Savers, lesser extent, but not all that far removed, to Dave's solo work, it's not music that I return to again and again and again like I do Depeche Mode. And this is what I wanted to talk about on the show today before we get to your emails, your listener feedback this week. In thinking about that very aspect, that here you have a track that is not all that far removed in terms of something that Depeche Mode would produce, written by somebody else, but being emotional, a tribute, having the elements there, the pacing of the song, Dave Gahan's vocals, it would have all of the ingredients one would want when listening to a track by a song from a band that you love more than any other band. But again, there's something about it. It's not Depeche Mode. That got me thinking about Dave's solo work, some of which I've enjoyed. A few tracks stick out that could have been Depeche Mode tracks, and I think could have been elevated further had Dave saved those for the band, or the band had accepted those tracks. I know Dave in the past on previous albums had presented tracks and they were rejected, and Dave went on to do those on his own. But apart from just a handful of Dave's solo songs, rarely do they pop up on a playlist or do I go seeking them out. But it's not just Dave. I mean, the same thing rings true for Martin. I love Counterfeit, but it's, a series of covers, and it's not Depeche Mode, even though I enjoy them. Not something that I seek out. If for some reason I'm going through Depeche Mode albums and I see it there, I might grab it and throw it on, but certainly doesn't get any sort of regular play on any of my Depeche Mode playlists. Neither does MG, which I enjoyed, but I haven't really gone back and listened to all that much. VCMG with Vince Clarke. I remember listening to that quite a bit when it came out, but that was mostly because my son, who's now 22, enjoyed it. And I can say the same thing when it comes to Counterfeit 2. I think I enjoyed the first Counterfeit album more than the second Counterfeit album. There are some tracks off of Counterfeit 2 that I enjoy, but again, it's not Depeche Mode. Same thing rings true for Alan Wilder for me. Now, everything that I'm saying is very subjective, so I want to say that now. I probably should have said it up front, because I know that, as we Depeche Mode fans are, we are incredibly varied in our love of various aspects of Depeche Mode, what songs we like, which ones we don't, and I have no doubt that there are many of you listening who probably enjoy the solo work perhaps as much as you do some of Depeche Mode stuff. I'm speaking for me personally, okay? The same thing rings true for Alan Wilder. Some of the stuff, the music that he produced, especially with McCarthy from, why am I blanking on his name? Douglas McCarthy. Man. Had a brain freeze there for a moment. Douglas McCarthy. Some of the Recoil stuff is good. I really liked Faith Healer. Some of the Recoil albums the Recoil albums that Alan produced later, I tried to get into and they just didn't land for me. And again, going back to this line of thinking that I had, it really began to shape this thought and cement this idea in my mind of just how magical it is and how special it is when the individuals all come together to form Depeche Mode music, and how it rises above, in my opinion, anything that they've done by themselves, any of their solo work. And again, for me personally, I know for you it might be different, and I'd love to hear your opinion, talkshownerd@gmail.com. A part of this also made me think of Alan and how much talk there consistently is of Alan Wilder, his influence on the band, his time with the band, and what happened with Alan after he left. And this is what I love about the Depeche Mode fandom, because there clearly is a contingent out there of people that would love to see Alan come back, right? It happens anytime we're in the middle of a Depeche Mode era. There is always this, I wonder, I wish Alan would come back, or, one more album with Alan, or what could it have been if Alan was there, okay? And I get that, but what I love about the fandom is it seems as if while there's a desire there, I've never seen a large, or a group of any size of Depeche Mode fans that didn't bother with anything after Alan left. It seems like there is a desire from a core, large group of Depeche Mode fans who would like to see Alan return, but that group didn't go and say, I dismiss everything Depeche Mode has done after Alan left. I got to thinking of this because of what Star Wars fandom is going through right now. And there is a contingent within the Star Wars fandom that refuses to go and get behind anything that has been created after George Lucas went and sold Star Wars to Disney. But unlike Depeche Mode, that doesn't seem to be the case, at least not that I have seen. So, this brings me to one more final point. And it got me questioning, what is the magic of Depeche Mode at its core? At the end of the day, what is it about Depeche Mode that makes Depeche Mode so great? What is it that separates music made by Depeche Mode from anything that the creators around the band, any of the current or former members of the band, and the music that they made, not as good as what Depeche Mode is? And I have an answer. It's Martin and Dave. And that was answered with Memento Mori. Now, this is not a denial at all of the contributions of Alan. And we can all, have our conversations about the quality of Depeche Mode songs and albums pre and post to Alan, and I think there's a lot of valid arguments there. I think that the band carried on and tried to bring in as many different variety of producers and musical and artists and musicians to fill in the gap, and I think they did a really good job. I mean, there's brilliant music that Depeche Mode has made in the decades since Alan's departure. But I think if you remove Dave or Martin from the equation, it's not Depeche Mode anymore. And if you have Dave and Martin together, it clearly is still Depeche Mode. And what I really found interesting, which got me excited again for the future, even though we're closer to the end of this band than we ever have been before, is that all of that music that came before it, by Martin Gore and Dave Gahan's own admission, was made without Martin and Dave really being that close of friends, and it seems as if now they are. I find that really, really fascinating. And I find that really encouraging. I'm reminded of a talkback that we had last week, and this speculation that they had of the band making more music, but maybe not touring like they did because they don't need it for financial gain, since that's where most of the money is made now. I'd love to know what you think, though. Am I completely off the mark on this? And again, it's all subjective. So, I mean, if you vehemently, I always have a hard time with that word. If you absolutely, vehemently, always have a hard time with that word. If you absolutely disagree with me, go for it. It's totally fine. Again, I understand we all have differences of opinions. And you could be a Depeche Mode fan that feels the opposite of everything that I said. I completely expect that. But I am genuinely interested if you track where I landed on this, about what really comes down to the core of Depeche Mode, and that's Martin or Dave. If we had, let's just say for the sake of argument, if we had lost Martin and Dave went to go and make Memento Mori with just Andrew Fletcher, I don't think it would have been nearly as good. If we had lost Dave and Andrew and Fletch was still here, and Martin and Fletch decided to go ahead and complete the album, but Martin's going to handle all the vocals. Certainly if they brought in another singer, which I can't ever imagine them doing, I don't think it would have been the same. Or if we had lost Martin and we had Dave, Alan Wilder, and Fletch, I don't think it would have been the same. Probably the closest to Depeche Mode they could have achieved, But I think that combination that's been so magical from the get-go of those two, and I would attribute it to Martin's lyrics and Dave's vocals, but you can't anymore because some of Dave's tracks have, in my opinion, have been some of the best work that the band has done. Before We Drown, Broken. I mean, those songs are amazing. And those are written by Dave. But I think it's his artistry that elevated those songs to a level that made them great. Beyond sort of, and took Dave's rather, I don't want to say mundane, but they're certainly not up to the same quality as Martin by any stretch. I love Before We Drown, but the lyrics are not that strong. That album's strong point, and Dave's lyrics, really ride the line. I mean, squeaking in his solo work, short and curly, still kind of makes me go, "Arr!" Right? I just don't. Wagging tongue. If that's not a Dave written line in that lyric, then I'm shocked, because that seems more Dave than it does Martin. So, what do you think? I'm genuinely interested. Am I completely off my rocker this week, or do you think what I've said has some level of truth to it? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. Paul writes, listener feedback. Thanks for another fascinating DM podcast last week. Really interesting as usual. Thank you. I wanted to comment on the possibility of future releases for Martin and Dave. And I don't think... No, we didn't. This is new. I'm very optimistic about more material. For me, there's definitely a sense that Martin and Dave both really enjoyed this time around, and they seem to be getting on better than ever. I'm sure they don't... Oh, okay, so here's what happened. You have to forgive me. I read this email before, and I mistakenly attributed it to last week's podcast. I actually hadn't read this yet, so I referenced this already. I'm sure they don't do it for the money, so there's no need to do a massive world tour attached to any new album. So for that reason, I don't think their age will be any barrier yet. It's interesting about Martin's original solo material. This has been limited so far to instrumentals, which has been quite different to the instrumentals of the DM albums. I suspect there's probably an intention to keep it distinctly separate and saving actual material for Depeche Mode albums. I agree that if Dave were to call it a day, it might spur Martin into releasing more DM-like solo material. It would be interesting if questions on this could be put to Martin. I really do believe that there will be new material for them in the years to come in some shape or form, even if just various side projects, and I will take whatever I can get. And then he mentions the Humanist brother with Dave on the vocals. Thanks again. I look forward to the next podcast. Thank you, Paul, very much for the listener feedback this week. Dave Hudson writes, when Ultra was released, it was difficult to get into. The more off-the-shelf percussion sounds featuring uncharacteristically loud hi-hats. The songs, however, were very strong. Dave Fulton emails in, by 1996, I was starting to think I was done with Depeche Mode, or that I had outgrown them somehow. While I loved Songs of Faith and Devotion and the tour, Dave's change of appearance and the embrace of a more rock-adjacent sound smacked of crisis and desperation. It didn't help that Dave was active in the press, talking up Jane's Addiction and Rage Against the Machine while dressing up as a skinny Danzig for Halloween. And while I have subsequently grown in my empathy for Dave's struggle at the time, the image shift struck me as juvenile kitsch. I frankly forgot about the band for a few years, honestly, even skipping purchase of the Songs of Faith and Devotion live album, as that release, again at the time, seemed like a hollow money grab. Now I view it as essential listening. But then I heard Barrel of a Gun one afternoon in late January of 97 on K-Rock, and I was floored. I had to pull over and absorb what I was hearing. It sounded like a band that had been through hell and come out the other side, and asked, is that all you got? It sounded nothing like the glam stomp of I Feel You. This was funky electronica. It was Depeche Mode saying, this is what we built and we ain't done yet. I found it inspiring. As for Ultra, it's clearly a transitional album that aligns almost one for one with A Broken Frame. a powerful, daring first single, a statement of survival after the departure of a major creative force, a thread of continued experimentation intermixed with a few sloppy and even slightly embarrassing moments. Jonah's a whaler to rhyme with you are the jailer. Yikes. I love that song, though. Man, I love that song. In other words, a great EP fattened up with an imperfect LP. But I'll tell you what, I once again found myself hitting the auto redial function on my phone with Ticketmaster to get seats for the singles tour when the time came. Ultra got me back in the game. Thank you very much for that, David Fulton. Friend of the show, friend of mine, friend of yours. Matt writes in, Amigo. Great pod today, thank you. The second you mentioned the Thought Experiment, a merch challenge posed by listener Chris Thorne, the wheels started turning. As far as musical release to choose from, great minds think alike. I, too, would have Dave and Martin pick one song from each studio release with the following rules and stipulations. Can't select a single. Must be an album track. Or B-side, My Joy. Hint, hint, guys just saying. Love that song. For each track selected, include, if available, original demo, album version, live version. My challenge answer, my rules, this is going to be a double album. And yes, John and Chris, you're welcome. Album 1 consists of the aforementioned tracks. Album 2 consists of those same tracks, but with an audio overdub, a la the special feature on the re-release of 101. Dave and Martin discussing why the track was selected. Amazing. Excellent choice. Thoughts on the progression of the demo to the album version and comments on the live version in particular, including any challenges faced when getting the track ready to present live, where it was recorded and any memories of that particular show and tour, etc. Yes, this music release is going to be spectacular, probably the greatest release of all time. Of course, Chris, Matt, John will share in the production royalties, and John will get his long overdue interview with Dave and Martin as John is going to conduct an audio overdub Q&A session. As for the apparel, this one's easy for me. The original Black Music for the Masses tour shirt, with the Spreading the News Around the World on the back, with the tour stops listed by city only, no dates, and mistakenly not in order. Note, the original vintage shirts were printed before the tour dates were finalized, including the Pasadena show, and thus didn't have all of them listed or properly ordered, which makes them even more of a collector's item. In any event, this is my favorite concert shirt of all time. So clean, so simple, so unique, so utterly Depeche Mode. I bought this shirt at the merch table at the show I attended in May 9th of 1988 at McNichols Sports Arena in Denver. Martin played Never Turn Your Back on Mother Earth that night. Incredible what you can find on DM Live Wiki. Martin only sang that song 18 times on the Music for the Masses tour and never again with Depeche Mode. I feel so lucky to have seen it live. By the way, because I know that you're a huge fan of the song as I am, did you know that Martin sang It Doesn't Matter on the Music for the Masses tour? I had no idea. He played it only once during the Some Great Reward tour and only 7 times during the Music for the Masses tour. Amazing listening to those Allen harmonies. Let's take a moment and give DM Live Wiki a huge shout out. Being able to listen to the 1988 show I attended takes me back to that night. I can remember exactly where I was sitting and got goosebumps upon first hearing the notes of Behind the Wheel to open the show. At the end of the opener, Dave said, "How you doing, Denver?" How about a year later when DM released 101? Remember buying the CD and rushing to my car to listen to it, eagerly anticipating how Dave would greet the crowd with, "Good morning, Pasadena." So iconic. I gave it no justice. Hey, see what I did there? I love that you were at the 101 show and that I've listened to that show thousands of times, and now here we are, having found one another via this podcast 35 plus years later. The power of Depeche Mode is incredible. The magic. P.S. I wore this Music for the Masses shirt so often that it eventually just fell apart. Such a loss. But it was well loved. So I fully co-sign bringing this piece of merch back. P.S. number 2. Any chance that we can get DM Live Wikis on the pod? That would be a fun interview. Yes, it would. I'll try to make that happen. It's funny. Your shirt falling apart reminds me of the Jerry Seinfeld bit of Golden Boy. But look, the collar is frayed. Golden Boy is dying. Golden Boy, he didn't make it. And this is Baby Blue. All right. Collectible. Sorry, had a Seinfeld moment. Collectible, how would this be? A huge, maybe 10 by 10 poster of a still from the Strangelove video. The cartoonish silhouette of the model walking the bulldog with the bong speaker shouting "Strange." What a cool piece of wall art that would be, especially if signed by the band. A little strange, see what I did there? Sure, but so very cool. Would be a great conversation piece and a fitting tribute to a band that I love. Quirky yet chic, funny but clever and totally cool at the same time. Fantastic. I endorse all of these suggestions fully, and I will pass them on to the management at Depeche Mode. If I were to be so lucky to have that contact information. All right, hey, that wraps it up. Thank you so much for checking out the pod this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing from you. Quick plug, if it's your first time listening and you like to read science fiction, I've written a series of science fiction novels. They are called EMBARK, 7 books in all in the series, inspired in part by Depeche Mode, my love of Star Wars and George Lucas. After Earth faces its end, the year is 2172, you follow pilots Taft, Keitha, and their crew on a journey of survival across the galaxy as they fight for their future among the stars. If you like science fiction, and you like it to be epic, filled with really cool technology, some romance, and lots of action, EMBARK is perfect for you. It is written for adults, but I'm a child at heart. It's great for ages 11 plus. Pick up EMBARK Book 1 today. Again, 7 books in all in the series, completed. First 3 books make up the first trilogy. Book 4 is a solo story that continues the story and links to the second trilogy of 5, 6, and 7. Available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited free, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook at Amazon.com. Search for Jon Justice, Jon, and EMBARK. Thank you so much for checking out the episode. I'll be back again next week. Until then, I hope wherever you are, you're happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. God bless. Bye.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is